Okay, today we're going to tie a Harlequin from Kelson. So what I've done is I've chosen all the materials that I need, so just a bit of material prep. Tying salmon flies is quite a long process and it takes me extremely long to tie it, so I'm going to split the videos up into little sections, just little steps as I go along. For example, like your gut in the beginning, then your tip, tag, and so forth. And I'll split those sections up to little watchable 5-minute videos, and then I'll just combine it all at the end and put it in one long video, so it'll probably be an hour-long video. But again, you can just skip through the little sections. I'm hoping that this would help somebody. Yeah, let's see how it goes. I've never tied the Harlequin before. It's a beautiful pattern. I've seen some really nice examples out there, some renditions. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to tie on our silkworm gut. Well, I don't use silkworm gut. I twist my own just using normal gut, fishing gut. I usually make two types. This one like that, where it doesn't unravel, and I usually only do it when I do like bodies made from fur or something like that, wool or anything. Then I make another one where you can see I have to tie the ends together, because these, as soon as you cut those off, they unravel. I like to do it this way, especially when I'm going to do a silk body. So let's attach our gut, thread. I always tie back towards the eye. And then I leave a gap in the front for where I think, so if we look at it, in the old days they used to have just a little point sticking out. So that's basically where I want it to end, and my wing is going to be tied in over there. And then now I'll tie in my gut. If you guys want me to do a video showing how to make it, let me know. And I'm going to do this full body, full length of the shank. And I'll show you now why I do it this way. Why I've got the two different types of gut. So now obviously we're going to build in a taper, towards when we have to wrap the silk. So now let me show you why I do this. So the nice thing about this is when you cut it, it unravels quite quickly. And I want to build in a taper. And all you're going to do is you're just going to ravel that up. Twist it forward. And you can see how it's opening it up. So otherwise you leave a step. If you don't unravel it and you don't open it up a bit, you're going to leave a step. Okay, so now that I've unraveled it, now I'm just going to cut off one section short and then progressively just cut a little bit longer as I go. So I'm starting with the small ones there. And now I just finish off laying the body. Get used to winding up your thread close to one another, because you want to have a smooth body for when you tie the silk. You don't want to see any lumps. And I can cut off over there. So what I did there is I just spun my bobbin just to get my thread flat again. And there you can see there's no step except for that little section there, but that will be built up. But otherwise, if I didn't do that, you would have this distinct step in the body, and it's going to take forever just to get it nice and smooth. So the next step I'm going to do is going to be the tip and the tag, and that'll be that section done. So now with the tag, the pattern calls for gold twist and olive green silk. I'm not a big fan of using gold twist on my tags, purely because I don't have thin ones. The twist that I've got is quite thick. So what we're going to aim for is just behind the gutter. That's where we're going to start. That's where we want our tag to start. So we're going to tie this in. Nice even wraps right next to one another. So you want that smooth as well. Like I said, just get into the habit of everything needs to be nice and smooth. So I'm going to leave my thread and see where that goes. Can go a little bit more. I'm going to flatten the thread out. And I'm not using wax on this because I'm using silk after this, after the tag. Well, after the tip and the tag. Otherwise the wax is going to seep through the silk. Yeah, that looks about right. Wind that out the way. I like to use the hackle pliers when I wind it. Gives me a bit more control. You don't have to do it, you can use your fingers. And we're going to aim for about 5 wraps. 3, 4, 5, and then come back. As you can see, it takes me a long time to tie a fly. I'm in absolutely no rush. I enjoy this. This is like semi-meditation for me. You just slip away as you tie this. Your mind just drifts. And again, you don't want a majorly long tip and tag. You really don't need it to be there. There's a general rule of thumb is to have your butt over the point there. Just look at the shank. You know, picture where the tail is going to come out. It needs to come out straight from the shank, and that's where you're going to need it. So I think that should be good. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rub just to get it smooth, and try and burnish the gold there a bit, the tip, and then just give it a little rub. Okay, what I generally like to do as well is when I wind in my tag, I don't just stop it blunt. I like to move up a little bit over the shank, because when I tie my tail, I tie it on top of that, because again, everything with that step, you don't want it to kick it up. So if you tie it on top of the silk, you generally have a flat base to work from. Okay. nice and close, right next to one another. First time I'm using this color as well. It's quite a pretty color. You can see I'm not using any gloves. I don't have time for gloves. Maybe when I do the body I'll do it, because there's a bit more exposure over there. And then tie down. So now I'm going towards the back end of the hook, because that's what I'm going to tie in my tail. Cut that off. Sounds like somebody's doing renovations at the back there. And then I'm just going to tidy this up. All these little end pieces sticking out. So I'm going to burnish it, and it should be nice and smooth. So what I use as a burnisher, just a little smooth stone, little pebble. And hold the hook so you don't push too hard, because you need to work it quite hard to get it nice and flat. And I'll probably end up using my tweezers just to pluck out these little fray pieces. I think I must have nicked it on the point there. And that's your tip and your tag. Okay, so after a bit of cleaning up, bit of burnishing, you can see it's nice and smooth. The transition is quite nice. And then yeah, so next will be the tail. And okay, now for the tail, I've selected this one. You get many different styles. Some guys like to have long tails, some have short tails, some have up. For me, I like a bit of a balanced fly where the height of the fly is generally about the same as that distance from there to there. My tail, I like to have just a little bit lower than the roof. That's if I do a married wing fly. To get it to splay open like this, I just use pliers and then use your nails. I just rub it just a little bit. And just a bit of a nick over there. You can see. So that is where my tail is going to be. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wax my thread a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah, it should be good. Soft loop. See how it's sitting, and then you can give it a bit of a pull. Yeah, I like that. And if it sits a little bit over the shank, because if you pull down on your thread, it tends to pull it over. You can just use your nail and just move it back into position. Look from the front. Yeah. Looking good. I like that one. Now I can cut this off, because now it's time for the ostrich butt. You can see there's quite a nice ostrich over here. It's got thin, well, very short fibers, and then just cut that little section off, because that's quite a hard point. And then just use tweezers just pull that back a little bit. You just want to expose the reiki or the ratio, whatever it's called, the stem. As you've probably gathered, English is not my first language. So now with the tail, because we're going to aim the fibers backwards towards the tail, the fibers needs to run down. So not up, run down, and then you push it away from you. Okay, and now you can tie it in. Nice and tight. Run this forward and out the way. So now as you wind it, you can see the fibers are facing the back of the hook. Probably end up using my ankle pliers, yeah. Quite short. Thank goodness for the wax. That looks good. See, that wax is really holding on tight, eh? And there we go. Cut that off. And clean it up. And then I generally have a little brush. Just a little bit of saliva. And I just wipe it backwards. You can use your fingers as well. That way I do clean my brushes. And it's only me licking it. Right, that is it. So the next step is I'm going to build up the body. I'm going to use that. You can buy it from any haberdashery shop or sewing shop. And then I'm going to burnish it because we're working with silk. I want it nice and smooth, like I said. And yeah, there we go. Okay, so some of you will notice that the tail is actually a little bit shorter than when I ended the other video. What I realized afterwards when I turned off the camera is that it's just a little bit too long for my liking, and that's one thing that I was taught, that if you don't like what you see, just redo that step. Don't be scared. It's only a ostrich hackle that I had to redo. I moved the tail forward a little bit, so it was maybe just a millimeter that it extended too far backwards. Redid that and put the ostrich roll back, or put a new ostrich roll back on. And yeah, like I said, don't be scared. It's not wrong. Rather create good habits than bad habits. So if you don't like something, do it again. Okay, so next we're going to do it calls for gold embossed tinsel, ordinary way, and then a silver tinsel reverse passing over the gold. So basically what that means is your gold goes at the top, at the bottom, because you're going to wrap it around the bottom of the shank over, and then your silver needs to run from the top and they need to cross in the middle. So you can see I've cut little edges into it, just a little taper, and that's how I'm going to tie it in. So the gold's going to go at the bottom and the silver will be at the top. So when I wrap them, they'll cross over. The reason why you cut that little tape is so that when you fold it over, it won't leave that like a big fold in the tinsel, and then it'll just wrap nicely flush against the ostrich butt as well. Okay, so I've waxed my thread, because obviously I'm going to cover it up with that layer that's going to go over, so I can get a nice even body. So you can see that's how I'm going to tie it in. So the taper runs down, so I'm just going to tie that in on the side. Just 2 wraps, and then I'm going to take my silver and with a taper obviously now to the top, because that's going to go in the opposite direction. So there's my taper facing up, and I'm going to tie that in just above it. And tie down nice and tight. There we are. And now you can wind it up. So now we're going to start building up the taper. Right, so taper. And then this I'm just going to get out the way. Okay, and now all we're going to do is we're just going to run it backwards and forwards. So we're going to go to about there, come back, well, to about there, come back, further, there, a little bit closer. So you're going to get it's called a cigar shape. So you want to get a nice cigar shape. You don't want it too high at the front. You basically want the height to be about there. So when this is done, you'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I've done the body now. So here's the tricky part now. So it calls for 3 equal sections in orange, light blue, and pink silk. You also need to make room for your throw tackle. So 3 equal sections. So when we measure it out, so remember I said ideally would like to have at least 1 millimeter left over in the front there for it to stick out. And I leave 2 mils for your head. You're going to tie your feathers on there, your head on there. And then your throw tackle at least 3 mils. So it leaves 6 mils that you want to take off. So there's the black mark. So now you measure up to your black mark. So that gives us about 30 mils. 3 equal sections means 10, 10, 10. Bearing in mind when you wind your throw tackle, it's going to take up a lot of space in the front there. It's going to be bushy and it's not going to look equal. So what I'd like to do is I start off a little bit smaller at the back, a little bit more in the front, in the middle, and then obviously a lot more in the front section. So I've divided it up into 8 mils at the back, 9 mils, and then 13 mils. So we're going to start with the orange silk, then we're going to go with the light blue, and then the pink silk. Okay, unfortunately I don't have any nice flat proper silk in orange, so I'm just going to use as Danville's. It's 4 strands, very thin. I only use this for tags, but unfortunately, like I said, I don't have. So what I've done is I've tied it in. You'll see the yellow mark, so I've marked where I'm going to do my body section. So I've tied it in, I've wound it a little bit to the back, and then moved my thread out the way, just so when you tie it off, because we're going to want to tie it off at exactly on that mark, it doesn't slip out. So let's see if this works with this Danville stuff. Just careful you don't accidentally nick it on the hook point. Usually I've got a little guard there. So this happens to me quite often, and then you have to redo everything. So far so good. That's why it's very important to burnish your underbody when you've laid down your underbody, just so you don't get any bumps in it. Okay, so this is now where when I brush my whole head with a spit out, so now you don't entrap anything. So it's right up against there, and move your way forward. And then just have a careful look, see if there's any gaps that you need to fill in. So instead of an edge to edge, maybe it just needs an extra wrap in there just to fill it up. And that is now, okay, so now it's on the white part. I'm still not on the yellow line where I need to tie it off. So now I'm on that yellow, on my yellow marking. So now I can tie it off. I'm going to do an extra one, just, that's it. Again, edge to edge with your thread wrap, and you tie it off. And I'm slowly going to just move my way to the next section. So now I can cut this off. There's enough for a tag. So I'll save that little piece. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to move this out the way. Again, edge to edge. Flatten your silk or your thread. Just in front, and we're going to get ready for the next color, which is going to be the light blue. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to burnish this off camera, and then you'll see when I'm done. Okay, so there it is. Orange, light blue, pink. You can see it's a little bit more in the pink section in the front. Good couple of mils, but remember, like I said, when you wind your throat in now, you're going to actually, when you brush it, it's going to take up quite a bit, and then it'll just cover up a lot of the pink. So it's an optical illusion. So you want them to look equal at least. In the meantime, I've changed my thread now to black, so the rest of the fly will tie in black. This is it for today. I'll do the rest tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll do the ribs and the throat and the wing. Okay, so now for the ribs. Let's see how this works. I've got the camera now sitting in front. Obviously you can see now that I'm facing from my side. So it's going to be a little bit tricky for me. So my fingers will probably end up getting in the way. But at least you'll get the idea of how to do the ribs from my point of view, you know, from the way I see it. So it calls for the gold first, with a silver running over. So you want to aim for your 5 ribs, and you can see I'm slowly just spacing it out as I move to the front. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then generally there's going to be for me a 6th one, because you're not going to see that. So at least you'll still see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ribs. And now for the silver. I should have gone for a thinner silver. Definitely should have gone for thinner silver. Yeah, I think a thinner silver would have been much nicer. Anyway, I know I did say if you don't like something, start from the beginning. But I'm just going to leave this as it is for now. And when I'll probably end up tying this fly again, because it is quite a nice fly. And those ribs aren't going anywhere. So I've just tied it off with 3 wraps. Make sure everything is in order, and then I'm going to cut off the tinsel. Okay, so I made sure that the wraps are nice and tight, that it's not folding over or anything. And then all I do is I just cut it off, and you just push it down with your fingernails. Just push it flat against the shank, and then tie down with wax thread. So now what you're doing is you're going to start building up your base for your throat. I'm actually just going to unwind a couple of it when I do my throat, and so it's not too bulky, otherwise your tippet's going to pop up. So that's what it looks like so far. Definitely should have gone for a thinner silver. Damn it. Okay, so now for the throat. So it says orange and light blue hackles respectively. So it means the orange is going to go through, or is going to go on first. And then what I like to do is I prep it. And when you do your throat, especially with flies that don't have hackle running down, you want to have a nice line from the tip of your tail through your butt, so you get an idea of more or less where your throat's going to be. So my throat's going to end up about there. So I took my hackle, this is just a spare one, just to show, open it up and see how long the fibers are. And this is when you select this is your prep in the beginning, so it's quite important to do your prep. So this is just a quick one to show that might just be a little bit still too short, which is why I chose this one. And you can see when it's tied in, it's going to run across. Obviously with a bit of preening and stuff, it'll be nicely in line. So it's going to be about 2 to 3 reps. Just pull it down so the way I prep it, just open it up and then snip it off there into a little wedge, shape. Okay, so let's do that one first. Need my hackle pliers. Okay, so I wax my thread. So like I said, I'm going to just take a few wraps off. And I'm going to tie in the orange first. Always tie it on the far side. Make sure you get all the hackle, the whole throat. I'm going to tie it in so it runs flush. So it needs to run parallel with a shank. Hackle pliers. And then just coaxed it over, just a little bit of a fiddle, and then tie in your throat. That's one. And then just keep folding them back. And I said the reason why we leave that 2 mil in the front there, you're going to cover that whole section. You don't want to bulk it up, because you don't want your tippets to kick up either. 2, maybe 1 more, and 3. Tie it off. And then cut off. Just going to clean that up. Okay, and then the blue one. And another trick I can give you, see if you can raid your wife's little mascara box. Get these little mascara brushes. If you can't, just go to a chemist and see if you can get some there, pharmacy or wherever. Some wax. And then when you put in your second throat, try and match it so it runs just past the next one. So whenever, even if you do guinea, you want the last one to go on to be just ever so slightly longer than the previous one. Now I'm going to take it to where I said I want my throat to be. You can double your hackle if you want. I hardly ever double my hackles, just because I can never get it right. And nice and neat in front of that one. Check your length and tie it off. That's my wife that's just walked in. And that's it. I'm going to clean that up. So now for the fun part, now for the main wing. When you, well, what I generally do is when I work with a married wing fly, I generally look for the tippets that's got that bit of a curve in it. It just sits nicely on the top of the shank, and it gives it a nice flow, as opposed to these straight ones. What you also want to look for is look for the same length. You want to take it more or less, it needs to be balanced, it needs to be a matched pair, a perfectly matched pair. As you can see, this, it's perfect. It's a perfect match. You can see the bars are running equally. And the reason for that is if it's not, the stronger one will push the weaker one out. So when you mount your wing, for example, if you look at the fly, if you mount your wing and you've got a strong feather, it's going to push it out, and your married wing is not going to sit straight on it. Also try and get your tippets from the same head. I like to match mine and then put a little sleeve. There's my sleeve, and then I just put in a little envelope, all my matched pairs. So again, what I'm looking for on this fly is a nice curved one, which I've prepped over there. You can see it's nice and curved, and let me show you how to mount it. So when it comes to mounting your tippet, it's quite important to not have that built up over there, because when you tie it down, putting a bit of pressure on the thread is going to kick your whole tippet up. You want the tippet to lie nice and flush against there. So what I've done is I've just created a little bit of a path where my tippet's going to run through using my little brush, and I'm just going to build it up just a little bit front there with wax thread, because the wax is going to help it so it doesn't slip. And then my tippets that I've matched, I want to try and get that black bar to be over the butt, and make sure that it doesn't cross. You don't want the stems to cross. Just a couple of wraps. And use your nail, or I sometimes use a tweezer, just to push them together. And if you see it sitting just a little bit over the butt, just play with the front section over there until it's dead center. There we go. And if you have a look, center. And then in this game, I can see it's just leaning over a little bit. Just fiddle it. Don't be scared to handle your feathers. It's just feathers. Work with it and manipulate it to do what you want it to do. That's better. And then working with tippets, spit is your friend. So you're just going to run it on top of the edge so it's nice and smooth, and it gives it that curve. And there's my tippet. One thing I did forget to mention is when I look for my tippet, remember I said in the beginning I don't like my flies to be quite high. I also don't like cutting my tippets to fit to the shape that I want it to be or to the size. I choose the correct size tippets, and I generally don't want my tippet to be any higher than that gape over there, because my wing is going to run flush on top. So when I tent it and I mount it, it's going to be at the top. It's going to run exactly over there. So I don't want the top of my wing to be any higher than that gape. I like a thinner profile. Again, this is totally up to you. It's your choice how you want to tie it. This is just the way I like to tie my flies. This is the scary part. So I'll do the video just now of how you build your wing. And I just need to line these guys up. You want to make sure they don't overlap. And what I'm going to aim for is my wing to come to about there. It needs to be just past the bend of the hook. So I'm going to open this up, place it over. Usually I would tent it and then go from the top, but because it's not going to be too high, I'm just going to open it up. Okay, again, look for the length. And another important thing is, don't use wax on your thread now. You want this to slip down properly. You don't want it to roll over. So the technique that I'm using is called the drop bobbin technique. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll the edge forward. Sorry, my hand's in the way. And I'm going to grip it again, again. And I'm holding on for dear life with my left hand. So the reason why it's called drop bobbin, so it's the weight of the bobbin that's going to pull the fibers down, while you roll the fibers forward. So you're compressing the fibers as you go. Now I'm going to give it one turn, realign again, and give it 3 or 4 turns. And I'm just going to pray for dear life that it sits nicely, and I'm going to let go. Okay, that is what you don't want, that fold there. And that's only because I moved it over the hackle, over the tippet stems. So I'm going to redo that part. I'm going to try for it not to hook on there. Otherwise you're going to fold in your hackle, your wing. Okay, let's see how it goes now. Hopefully better. I must have tied like 100 married wing flies already, and I still can't. I still get nervous when I do it. And that is better. Yeah, not too bad. I'm going to walk away from the fly now, just to sit and think if I should redo it or not. But it is sitting nice and flush against the underwing. And I will come back with fresh eyes and just manipulate it so it's nice. And don't be hasty. Take your time. You've taken your time up until now to tie the fly. Make it look good. So I'm going to step away and see what I think. Let's talk about making the wing quickly. This is not what's in the materials called for, but there's just going to be a quick demonstration of how you do your married wing. So what we've got here, we've got peacock and we've got turkey feathers. When you do your married wing flies, I do it tips up. You'll probably hear the phrase tips up, tips down. My wing is tips up when I do a married wing fly. So the way you're going to do that is by taking the right hand side of your feather, and that's going to go on the far side, on the fly, the side on the furthest away from you. Your left hand side feathers of the feather will be your near side, and I'm going to show you now quickly just how to marry your feathers to get your wing. Okay, so typically what you're going to do is you're going to decide how many fibers you're going to need from each feather. So we're just going to do a quick, here's a thing that I wanted to explain. When you build your wing, you can see the edge of the feather, and that is basically the edge that you want to simulate. So I'm going to choose just a quick one. This is just for demonstration purposes. Just take off some there. In fact, let me take off a nice big piece, a big chunk. It's just off-cut feathers that I put in a box if I tie little flies. And I'm going to do the same on the turkey. Just a nice big slab quickly. So now obviously this is going to go on the outside, so I generally just turn my feathers around. Peacock is usually quite short. It's not often that you'll find fibers longer than that'll fit a 4/0 hook. And what I'm going to look for now is, I'm going to take the tip of the top section of the feather and I'm going to place it at the bottom of the other one, of the turkey. And I'm going to marry those. So as you can see now, there's a bit of a recurve in these feathers. That's why they're not being used. So as you can see, it's following the edge of what a normal feather would look like. Just a little hint, if your feathers aren't matching, or if they're not marrying, it's probably because you've got a right and the left mixed up. So when you cut your feathers, your strands for your feathers, get a little box that you can keep all your lefts in and all your rights in, and that will just make it a lot easier. So that is how I built the wing for the Harlequin, which this is now the one that I've taken off first attempt. Didn't like the way it sat, was maybe just a little bit too short. I could go and steam it, but I thought no, let me just rather build a new one. And also the edge that I had on this one isn't what I wanted. And then there's your wing. So if I had to marry these guys up, I'll place it in there. And there's my far side of the feather, of the wing. Okay, so now for the sides, jungle cock. If I can give you just a little bit of a tip, get yourself these little business card holders and just spend some time prepping your materials beforehand. And if you're not busy tying a fly, just get all your match pairs, put them in a little sleeve, so when you do need it, you can just take it out, match it up, see if it works for you. It just saves you a hell of a lot of time. In the beginning, when I started this, trying to find the right feathers took more time than it actually did to tie the fly. So this comes in very handy. So I've got all my jungle cock in there. I've got my sides, or my cheeks, my kingfisher. So I've all got matched pairs, and I just go and find the right size and tie it on. So just a little useless information. So now when I try and find, or when I find my jungle cock, I like to look for feathers on the side of the cape that have got a nice curve in it. So you can see it's got a nice little curve in it. So these ones I've already prepped quickly, just to save some time, camera time. and then I've waxed my thread. You can see that I've changed the wing. I'm glad I stood back, I stepped back a little bit just to have a look. Decided to rebuild the wing. Yeah, this one's a little bit longer as well. The other one was just a tad bit too short. Okay, so now for the jungle cock sides, these are sides. It's not a cheek, it's sides. So they need to come quite far to the back. I like to get mine to sit either just before or just above the butt, maybe even just not even that far. And then I generally start with the far side. So I find my length, get my angle, and I also cut little. I don't strip it, I cut it, because these jungle cocks, when you tie them in, they generally tend to want to roll on you. And then just find my position, and I'm going to give it 2 wraps. And obviously I've whacked my thread, one soft one and then one slightly tighter, and then the near side. Try and find the exact length so that's on the bar. Notice. You want to tie it just on the side of the shank. If it sits a little bit down, not high enough, just pull down on that side a little bit, on the tip. You could take it off and redo it. Give it a little bit of lift, and there it is. Two wraps, and there's my jungle cock. Okay, so we're waiting for the final stretcher. So now for the topping, I prep, like you've seen now, I've prepped all my stuff beforehand. And then what we're going to do now is, I like 2 different types of toppings. You get the one that's quite thick, or you go for the one that does that shower thingy. And to get that, is I just take my pliers, and I just run my thumb threads, and then you just play around with it, play it till it's straight. But obviously I'm not going to choose that one. I like this one. It's got a bit more dense on top, because I'm not going to want that to go down the sides. I want this to be nice on top. And find a topping that you can tie down at the front. You don't want to cut it off over there, because it starts getting very brittle. So the more of the tip you can use, the better. So this one is the perfect one for me. So let's see if I can get on. Okay. Oh, and also I've prepped the head already. I've waxed the thread so the topping won't slip off. Put it on. If you see it's kicking up, it means it's pushing against the front section of the wing. And just redo it. Where you've put in the fold, that's where you want to tie it in. It's like Murphy's Law. Usually you get this on first time. But now that I'm recording it, it's going to take me the whole day. That should do it. And then I'm just going to give a lift to the top. Perfect, that's just what I wanted. And there is your topping. Right, so now for the horns, I've selected the 2 fibers. So the right hand side of the feather goes on the far side of the fly. And then what I've done is I've just added quite a bit of wax on my thread. And then what I'm going to do is, because I want to keep the profile nice and low, I'm going to aim for low. So I want it to be just past the back end of the fly, and I'm just going to hold it down. One wrap, looks fine. Another wrap, and then the near side. Same length, same height, I hope. And I'm going to aim for it to cross at the back. But that's not the end of the world. And 2 wraps. And there we go. And then I'm just going to secure it with some thread wraps. So now we're going to start preparing now for the head. And this is a tricky one. I've only ever done a head like this once before. Add some wax. You're going to need a lot of wax for this head. And you also want to start shaping your bullet shape of your head now. So I'm going to trim the horns off. And I'm going to start building up the head. Okay, so the final thing for this fly is the head. I'm a little bit nervous about doing this head. Only done it once before. So I've opted for the medium oval gold. I had to practice on a couple of older flies of mine just to see how to do it again. Because yeah, it's not easy to do this type of head. Like I said, I've only done it once before, and let's see if I can get it right. So I'm going to wax my thread. Like I said, you're going to need a lot of wax on your thread, just to prevent it from slipping down, because it is a cone shape head. And then what I generally do is I'm going to tie it on the far side. I'm going to tie it down, just so you don't. I've exposed the core as well, so I've just stripped off some of the tinsel, the gold tinsel. Sorry about my hand in the way there. And I'm just going to wrap that down. So I'm actually going to spin this. I'm not going to flatten out the thread. I'm going to make it round. And I'm just going to build it up just a little bit. Add a bit more wax. And I'm not going to take it all the way down, just to there, and then return my thread back up. So I'm going to tie down. Okay, so it worked first time on my practice flies. Let's see if it works now. Let's come back a little bit. I'll be super happy if I can get it right the first time. And I think that is where I'm going to stop, and I'm going to do one wrap behind the head. Have a look. That looks okay. And I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to cut it underneath so I can see. And then just give it one more wrap to secure it. And whip finish. Can't tell you how nervous I am. And done. Not exactly like the pictures that I've seen, but you know what? For a second time, I'm pretty happy. the fly. Complete. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to preen it a little bit for its final photo shoot, and then I'll post the final video. Thanks for watching, guys.